And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 221,001 Core 1A Plus Study Group. This is, we got 10 minutes before we get started, and it's warm in here, so I got to turn on the air conditioning here in Florida so that things will cool down just a little bit. Let's go down to about that temperature. We're going to see how that goes. And I think we're in pretty good shape. I've already got the podcast intro already done. I've got video is up. That looks good over here. These look pretty good. We're in pretty good shape. I think we're ready. Hello, chat room. I need to pop the chat room out so that I can actually see it. There we go. We'll put it over there. We'll put this, put stream health on and put that over there. Okay. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. We're trying to get things started this morning. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think things are, it's been, whenever I get these extra weeks, sometimes there's 2 weeks between some of these study groups, and it's almost like I forget everything. Like, where's the buttons? Where's everything go? Where do we plug things in? where did that go? Not much changes in here while that's happening, especially right now, because this is the normal config when I'm shooting a video, when I'm shooting training videos. This is the normal config. So it's exactly the same when I'm live stream as to when I'm shooting offline. And we've been doing a lot of offline because the Network Plus course is underway. So that's why it's relatively familiar to me right now. Just whenever we're doing offline, I just don't start the streamer. That's pretty much it. So that's what's going on there. Let's see. That looks good. This looks good. Okay. It's all working, at least for the moment. We'll see how that holds up for us. See how that goes. Last week, we had a tropical storm come through. Network was mostly online the whole time, but there was a little bit, always days after a big storm like that, they have to repair lines so things go up and down, up and down. So it's kind of good that we didn't do that yesterday. I'm getting a little flickering in my laptop video. We're going to see how that goes. Gonna see how that goes. So we'll see. Let's see how we do with our questions today. They're all from the 221,001. So that part's good. We'll get started. It's flickering again. I'm going to have to, what should we do here? Is it this one? Everything looks tight and is in there pretty good. It could be related to the connector that I am using. Don't want to have to restart that at the moment, but I will. Maybe I should. Won't hurt, right? Well, let's see. That's on APC 3, I think. Let's log in. Let's turn off the... No, it's on 2. Let's turn off that connection. This would be the MacBook Pro HDMI. Let's turn it off. And that goes away. You can see the little box right here went dark. And let's turn it back on. And if all goes well, that little box will turn back on. Will it? Let's see what happens. Look at that. Now, I don't know if that's actually going to fix anything. I have a feeling that my problem is related to a cable, but we'll struggle through. I think if you can handle a little bit of flickering now and then, I think we'll make it through here. And then I'll really dive into it after we're done today. See how it goes. We got about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Mr. Sinatra, and we'll get going. Okay. Got a lot to go through as well. I've got lots of questions for today. We got a lot this month. It's kind of crammed into the next 2 weeks. Normally, I do my A+ study groups on Tuesday and Thursday, which we are doing this week. Normally, next week is Network Plus, and the week after that is Security Plus, but I've changed the schedule yesterday. So next week is Network Plus and Security Plus on Tuesday and Thursday. So everything in the month, we're sort of cramming into 2 weeks. What could go wrong, right? Just more writing for me to do on the weekend. That's what that is. It's more of that. So we'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. I think this is this should work out pretty well. See how this goes. Okay. All right. So chat room, how have you guys been? It's been like 3 weeks since I did one of these. Really 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks after, really 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks after doing the last one. Yeah, let's start. What are we waiting for? Top of the hour. We got 4 minutes and we will get started, I promise. Final checks look good here. I am recording down here. You can see the Cylons are going. We're recording up here always. That looks good. And we're recording on the YouTube, so we're in pretty good shape there. So I think we're going to make this work. I think we got it going on. Got to figure it out. Oh, I think the next part we'll do the 220-1001 today. We'll do the 220-1002 on Thursday. So today is this month is all A+. All A+. We got a lot going on. Let's keep that up. Let's keep those potted down. This is one where since it's been 3 weeks, I'm almost double and triple checking things. Like, what did I miss? Certainly there's something I missed. We'll find out shortly what that will be. At least the streaming is working. The video is working. We're in pretty good shape. We'll make it work. We will make it work. I think there is nothing more to do. I think we're in pretty good shape. I need to, now that I've got everything sort of cleared out, because normally during the week, this monitor is much closer up. When I'm not streaming or not recording, this monitor is closer up. So now when I move it back, I think, wow, I need to dust. It's just constant. I need to clean that off. So it's about time we do that in the studio. Let's do a once over, get things going. I don't even want to look at the back of my monitor. The monitor is an iMac, so it's curved in the back, so it usually collects a little bit of dust. And that's my canary in the coal mine. It shows me, oh yeah, okay, it's time to clean this place out a bit. So that's always a reminder. More work for me. What streaming program software do I use? I use OBS. This is it over here. That's that screen. That's right to my upper left is OBS. Not the fancy version, just the normal version. Now the actual creating of the video and the content of what OBS is just taking a single output and sending it to you. So I've got this video that you're seeing is a single thing that I am sending, and I manage all of that through the video switcher that's here. So all the picture-in-a-picture and all of the video inputs and outputs are all coming through this Blackmagic Design 4K television studio. That's what's in front of me. And everything's here. It's so tiny. It's so little. Everything is in this one control, which is remarkable. I always have shorts on. I live in Florida. I'm always wearing shorts. Unless it's the winter, because it does get cool here. You will be able to view this later. It'll be available immediately afterwards on the YouTube. As soon as I push the off button, it uses a couple minutes to process, and then it's available for all of that. All right. I think No, there's no test retirement dates coming up for A+ at the moment, so we're good. I am not. No, I'm not wearing sandals. I'm inside. We're good. I think it's time. I think with that, we should. Why is that so bright? It's hurting my retinas. Let's pull up the keynote. Let's get a green light here. Do I like Mac over Windows? Well, right now you're watching me use a Mac, stream through Windows from a Linux server. So there you go. I like them all. I use them all. They're all good. Time for study group, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 Professor Messer 220-1001 Core 1A+ study group. Is it just me, or is that title getting longer and longer each week? I keep adding more things into it. This is all about the A+, but only one part of the A+, the Core 1 part of the A+. Come back in a couple days. We've got another study group for the Core 2 A+. So we'll do half of it today. We'll do half of it Thursday. We'd love for you to join us for both of those. We've got a lot of things to go through today, so I'm going to bring up displays and get everything running. We're going to go through Q&A in this first hour. I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and then in the second hour, I open up the phone line. I take questions from the chat room. We do a number of those things throughout the month. There's lots going on. We can talk about all of that in just a moment. If you're here live and you would like to participate, you would like to interactively answer the questions that I'm asking, you can do that through a website called Socrative. I have a link, an easy link that will get you there. Pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA. That is the link you want to follow, professormesser.com/QA. There's also an app for it. Of course, there should be an app for it. It's called the Socrative Student app. There's two apps. There's a teacher app and a student app. You want the student app. I use the teacher app. And then when you get into the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. Now, if you've done all of that, you've gone to professormesser.com/QA, or you've gone into the app and you put in the room name of Professor Messer, all one word, then there will be a question waiting for you. We call this question our rewind question because it's a question from our last study group. So we'll have to see if you remember what the answer to this was, but this gives us a chance to see if we know what the answer might be and that we're able to get in and see it. The question asks, a system administrator is configuring an IoT device using a direct wireless connection to the device. Which of the following would describe this connection? Would that be 802.1x? Would it be Bonjour? Would it be Centronics? Would it be TIA 568B? Or would it be ad hoc? If you think you know the answer, visit the link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put answers in the chat room. Please do not put hints in the chat room. And we will come back to this question in just a moment. We've got so much that is going on this side of the camera. I hope things are going well on your side as well. There's a lot of activity going on because there is plenty of content coming out. I think tomorrow is the official release date of the Network Plus, the brand new Network Plus that's out. Doesn't apply to us at the moment, but I have a lot of things happening on this side. But whenever you want to know what's going on, you can always visit us on all of our social media links. Just type in professormesser.com/YouTube/Twitter /Instagram/LinkedIn/ whatever you think you should be able to find us on. You go to professormesser.com/QA. To answer the question. Maybe I should move that from the screen. There you go. If you want to follow us on YouTube, professormesser.com/YouTube/Twitter and /Instagram. YouTube's going to be very busy tomorrow. So if you want to join, subscribe, click the bell, you will get a lot of Network Plus videos tomorrow. There's a lot happening there. In this study group, it's good for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU in the way that YouTube qualifies these. So listen in during this first hour. I will give you instructions on how you can earn an email that certifies that you were actually here and waiting and participating in the study group. And then I'll send you don't have to wait very long. I'll send you the email with those details. We are talking all about the 220-1001 and the 220-1002 A+ exams over the next few days. Today, it's all about the 220-1001. Both of these exams were released on January the 15th of 2019. Now, given that CompTIA tends to retire these exams about 3.5 years after they are released, we expect that exam retirement to be in July of 2022. So that's why I tell people right now, as we sit here in September of 2021, keep studying. You have plenty of time to study this exam, to learn everything you need to learn, take the exams, and put the certification in your pocket. Do not wait until January or July to get certified. That just doesn't even make sense. Everybody else is going to be certified and you won't be. So make sure you go out and get that certification. You got plenty of time. The exam requirements for the 220-1001 is you get 90 minutes on the exam and you need to score a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. So it's an odd scale. It's a little bit of an odd scale, but hopefully it's one of those situations where you're not going to run into much of a problem trying to figure out whether you did well or not, because you just go through the exam, answer it the best you can. You'll see at the end if you get at least the 675, and in the case of the 220-1002, the 700. There's also a set of objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and you can find those. Today we're going to cover mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization, cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. Those are all 5 topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. As you know, every single one of my videos is available for you to watch online for free. So if you're looking at one of my training courses online, everything's there. We don't hold anything back. There's nothing behind a paywall. You don't have to register. All you have to do is go to my website or go to YouTube and watch the videos. That's it. But there are other materials that we create that might be useful to you. My Success Bundle includes downloadable versions of all of those videos, downloadable version of those videos in MP3 audio format. It includes course notes, practice exams, my Exam Hacks ebook, exclusive Q&A access for this study group, and there's some other things in there as well. You can find it all at professormesser.com/1001success. There are also Q&A practice questions on my website. This is the Take 10 Challenge. Practice questions for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. You can go to professormesser.com/take10 and see all of the Take 10 questions available for the A+. There's also an audio version of this available for replay in podcast format. You go to professormesser.com/podcast and you can subscribe to my A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus Study Group podcast feeds, which might help you. The video version of this is also available, so you can choose whichever one works best for you. There is certainly plenty to see if you watch the video replay. One of the nice things I can do on YouTube is to add additional information into the YouTube video description. So my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this replay. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's watching this as it goes by. She is putting in timestamps in the YouTube video description. So if you're looking for something in particular, you'd like to jump ahead, you'd like to move back, you can easily do that by simply clicking the timestamps in the YouTube video description, and you can go back for years to find that content. All very useful, and thank you, Lori, for doing that. Everybody in the chat room, I see people thanking you as well. It's really useful if you ever had to find anything. Plenty to see there. For those of you that haven't seen my course notes before, I take every single one of my videos. I take all the text, all the graphics, all of the details from every video, and I create a set of course notes. Here are the course notes in PDF format. You can see everything from my videos is in here. It's just extensive information. The videos, the course notes are from 18 hours of videos, 137 videos total for both of these. You can find the course notes at professormesser.com/1001notes. I've also got, for those of you that are ready to take your exam, do not pay full price for your exam voucher. Do not go directly to the Pearson VUE website and pay their full price either. Instead, you can get a discount that's already built into the vouchers that are on my site. You don't need any type of coupon code. You don't have to hunt around for finding what the codes might be. You don't have to use one of those annoying things that you put in your browser. They're just already discounted for everybody. You don't have to play any games. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Not only will you buy your voucher for less than retail price, but you'll also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook for free. So there's another example of where you might be able to even come out a little ahead by buying the voucher on the Professor Messer website, ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. So let's go back to this question that asked, a system administrator is configuring an IoT device using a direct wireless connection to the device. Which of the following would describe this connection? Would it be 802.1x, Bonjour, Centronics, TIA 568B, or ad hoc? And you can see 52% of you have said that the answer is ad hoc. 36% of you said 802.1x. And then the rest are single digits in this case. For those of you that have ever had to share anything over wireless, if you need to go any type of distance, Bluetooth isn't going to go very far. 802.11 is something that you could use, but that wasn't one of the options. But the one that probably makes the most sense is ad hoc mode. Ad hoc mode is when you do not have an access point. You need to communicate directly to the device. If you've ever had to set up an IoT device, usually it starts in ad hoc mode so that you can first connect to it wirelessly, configure it, and then finally it is now communicating to the access point that you happen to have. So it doesn't have a way to configure it. There's no keyboard on these devices. There's no keyboard on a garage door opener. There's no keyboard on a light switch. So you use this ad hoc mode to communicate to these IoT devices and plug in. And the ad hoc mode is simply a mode where two devices are communicating directly without the use of an access point, which makes it very easy to configure. And it does use the frequencies. It uses the frequencies that are specific to those channels that you're setting up for ad hoc. You're just not using an access point. Everything else is pretty much the same. It's sort of like an 802.11 for just two people. That's it. And that's a very useful way to configure these devices. Answer E, ad hoc, was the right answer. 802.1x is network address or network access control, NAC. Network access control allows you to integrate some type of centralized username and password database, as well as set up special configurations inside of your switches to perhaps put people on their own specific VLANs. 802.1x is not what you would use with an IoT device. So that's one of those situations where ad hoc, in this list of things, ad hoc is really the only one that makes sense. Hopefully that will help you as you go through your studies for A+. That was our last question from last month. That was the only question we deal with from last month. Everything from this point forward, all new questions for September. And as you know, the questions that I do, the very first new question that I do in a study group is a performance-based question. If you haven't taken one of these exams before, you may not even know this, is that the first handful of questions you get on your actual exam are questions that are not multiple choice. So the question we just did was a multiple choice question. There was a question and the multiple choices to choose from in the set of answers. Well, that's great. And the bulk of the exam is multiple choice, but there are a number of questions right at the beginning that are not multiple choice. They're drag and drop. They could be fill in the blank. They could be matching. They could be putting things in a particular order. So what I've done is create a performance-based question for you as your first new question of the study group. This question asks, list the protocol, TCP or UDP, and the port number. And this is effectively a fill in the blank. I have 5 different configurations, 5 different descriptions, and I want you to tell me the protocol and the port number. So tell me if it's TCP or UDP, and tell me what the port number is. At least half of them you'll be able to figure out. So these are the 5 different descriptions. The first is automatically assign an IP address, and I'm looking for 2 ports on that one. The second is retrieve an email to a mobile phone using POP3. That's probably very insecure of you, but that wasn't the part of the question. You still have to be able to do that. Answer C is resolve the IP address of www.professormesser.com. What protocol and port number would be used for that? The fourth description is manage the console of a remote device and do this insecurely. There's a lot of insecurity in this particular list, but there are a number of protocols on the list of protocols you need to know which are insecure. So I'm quizzing you on those. And the last one is control the mouse on a remote Windows computer. What is the port and the protocol for all those? Now, if you think you know the answer, please do that answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Watching the answers come in now. A number of you are putting those answers in, trying to figure out what they are. I'm not looking necessarily for the name of the protocol. I want to know TCP or UDP. We'll talk about what the protocol names are in just a bit as we step through those. I want the the protocol type, TCP or UDP, and the port number. That's it. Those are the only two things I specifically need. If you give me more than that, then I guess that's extra credit for you. We don't give extra credit, but I'll give you extra credit. By the power vested in me, I grant you extra credit if you do that. I don't know that that's really necessary, but there it is. For those of you listening in, let's go through all 5 of these again. It is automatically assign an IP address. I'm looking for 2 ports. Retrieve an email to a mobile phone using POP3. Resolve the IP address of www.professormesser.com. Manage the console of a remote device and manage it insecurely. And then lastly, control the mouse on a remote Windows computer. Lock in your answers. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock them in. I see a number of us are trying to figure this out. You know, if you spend time memorizing port numbers by simply looking at a number and then flipping over the card and seeing what protocol it's associated with, you'll notice this won't help you. Knowing what the protocol name is and what the protocol port number is probably not what you will be asked on the exam. There's very few questions on the exam that are straightforward trivia questions. You're not going to get a question on the exam that says, what is the port used by non-encrypted web server traffic? Well, actually, you might get one like that. What you won't get is, what is the port number for HTTP? You'll never get a question like that on your exam. What protocol is used by port 80? You'll never get a question like that on your exam. So this is why I tell people, don't worry so much about knowing the intricacies of what port number and abbreviations or acronyms go with those. You need to know what those do. You need to understand when you would use those protocols and how they would be implemented. So this is a pretty important part of this, is really understanding how these things are used. Very different than understanding perhaps just a name and a port number and how because what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you anything. That's just rote memorization. And these exams don't tend to focus on trivial memorization. They tend to focus on more extensive memorization of content, how these terms are used, how these technologies are used. Pretty useful and pretty important to know that. Let's see how we did with this one. We're going to step through each one of these one after the other and see what port numbers I chose and see if you chose the same ones. So let's list this protocol and port number. The first one is automatically assign an IP address. Well, if you can think in your head, that's probably DHCP, and DHCP uses UDP port 67 and UDP port 68. Both of those are used by the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Next on our list is retrieve an email to a mobile phone using POP3. POP3, the Post Office Protocol version 3, uses TCP 110 if you are doing this insecurely. If it's not POP3S, which would be the secure version, it's just POP3. So it's TCP 110. Next on our list, resolve the IP address of www.professormesser.com. If you thought that's probably DNS, then you're right, the domain name system. Those domain name system protocols commonly use UDP over port 53. Now, if it's doing some very large transfers of data, you may find DNS traffic changing itself to be TCP traffic. Things like zone transfers, for instance. use TCP, but for simple name resolution, almost 100% of the time, I don't know that I've ever seen name resolution ever use TCP. It's always UDP that it's going to use. Fourth on our list, manage the console of a remote device insecurely. So this is what you should not be using. You should not be using Telnet. And Telnet uses the TCP protocol over port 23. Last on our list, control the mouse on a remote Windows computer. You can imagine there we're using remote desktop to be able to do that. And if you're using RDP, the remote desktop protocol, it uses TCP port 3389. Those are the 5 ports and protocols on our performance-based question for this month. I could have made it a matching question or a drag and drop. I made this one a little bit harder because you had to really know them and plug them in to the list. So very quickly, automatically assigning an IP address. Those 2 ports are UDP port 67 and UDP port 68 for DHCP. Retrieve an email to a mobile phone using POP3 is TCP 110. Resolving the IP address of www.professormesser.com is UDP port 53. Managing the console of a remote device insecurely is Telnet on TCP port 23. And controlling the mouse on a remote Windows computer, the remote desktop protocol is TCP port 3389. There's a lot there to go through. Hopefully, you're familiar with those. Now, all of those port numbers come directly from the exam objectives. So if you don't know these or you're not familiar with what these do, make sure you look that through. And of course, in my video on the 221001 section 2.1, I have a video called Common Network Ports, where I go through each one of the ports and I explain to you what those ports are doing and why they are important. So that might help you if you're trying to figure that out for the exam. Hopefully you did well in our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you'll do well if you're asked these types of questions on the exam. Let's move forward with a multiple choice-based question. Next on our list is this question that asks, a user is not able to send emails from their mobile phone. Which of the following would be the most likely problem? Would it be IMAP4, SMB, SMTP, POP3, AFP? A user is not able to send emails from their mobile phone. Which of the following would be the most likely problem? Would it be IMAP4, SMB, SMTP, POP3, or AFP? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen. Lock in that answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this out as if we are sitting for the exam. There's no Google available. There's no phone available. You can't call someone. You can't ask someone else. And certainly there's no chat room during the exam. Wouldn't that be great? There's a chat room. I could really use that. I could make use of that, which is why they don't have it. That's just why that's not there. It's not one of those options. So hopefully you know these. Users not able to send emails from their mobile phone. Which of the following would be the most likely problem? Is it IMAP4, SMB, SMTP, POP3, or AFP? Another good example of questions that have an acronym or something that is sort of hiding the actual name, but you're not asked for something simple like a port number. You're being asked a question here about what these do. So it's important that you really understand what these protocols do under the surface, on the network itself. What does IMAP4 do? What does SMB do? What does SMTP do? What does POP3 do? What does AFP do? All of those are real protocols. They're all from the CompTIA exam objectives. So we really do need to understand what each one of those protocols does. And if you really want to push yourself and you know the right answer, now look at all the wrong answers. Do you know what all of those are? Very often, the most interesting things you can learn are the wrong answers, the things that are not the selected option. So understanding why a right answer is right is important. Sometimes understanding why a wrong answer is wrong can be more important, especially if you get the question wrong. Understanding why you got it wrong becomes pretty important. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a user is not able to send emails from their mobile phone. Which of the following would be the most likely problem? Would it be IMAP4, SMB, SMTP, POP3, or AFP? Our results show that 72% of you say that it's SMTP. 15% said POP3, 11% said IMAP4. So what's good about this is everything but 2% of the answers were all email-related protocols. So if you could take anything away from this, it's that, thank goodness, we all knew our email protocols. So that part's good. Only 2% said SMB. Nobody chose AFP. Why is that? Well, it's because it has nothing to do with email. SMB and AFP are file transfer. Well, we'll come back to what those are, but they're commonly used to transfer files in other operating systems. Where we were focusing on this, 72% of you focused on SMTP because SMTP is the simple mail transfer protocol. It's what you use when you're sending emails from your device out to the internet, out to an email server, an SMTP server. It's also used for servers to communicate amongst each other. So if you will send your email to your local SMTP server. That SMTP server will send the email to the destination SMTP server, and somehow on that end, it gets to the end user, depending on the type of email client that they use. There's also very commonly authentication required for this. So if you're not able to send a message, it's probably because your username and password isn't correct. We don't usually find SMTP servers that are wide open. Can you imagine if spammers could just send a mail through any mail server whenever they wanted to? It's already bad enough. So being able to authenticate to this is pretty important. SMTP with no authentication uses TCP port 25. There is a secure version of SMTP that requires some authentication and other security. It uses TCP port 587. So SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, was the correct answer. 73% of you did get that one absolutely correct. POP3 and IMAP4 are two popular email protocols, but they're used for retrieving email messages. This question said that the user is not able to send emails from their mobile phone. So if you're dealing with an email question on your exam, look to see if there is mail that's being received or if the mail is being sent. And already you should be able to start separating some of those things out. There are a number of different SMTP protocols that you will find, although 465, isn't 465 the one that got deprecated? So I see other people still supporting it, but really everybody should be converting over to this latest version, TCP 587. Although in the big scheme of things, I don't think it's that big of a problem. The two protocols that people did not choose, SMB and AFP. The SMB protocol, the server message block, is used in primarily Windows-type operating systems. It's used in other places as well, but Windows is a common place to see SMB, and that's how we transfer files and use printing and use other file-based services on a Windows network. AFP is the Apple filing protocol, a similar protocol, but for Apple, macOS, iOS-type devices. So that's why in this case, SMB and AFP, definitely not the right answer. POP3 and IMAP4 only for receiving. The only one that would send emails is answer C, SMTP, and 73% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question. Since we're had a number of people asking about wireless already today, here is a question that asks, a hospital uses a wireless network using 2.4 gigahertz with a maximum throughput of 54 megabits per second. Which standard is the hospital using? Are they using 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n, or 802.11ac? A hospital uses a wireless network using 2.4 gigahertz with a maximum throughput of 54 megabits per second. Which standard is the hospital using? Is it using 802.11a, B, G, N, or AC? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please don't put anything in the chat room that might cause me to think that you're putting a hint or an answer in the chat room. We don't want to see those. We want to try to see if we can get these ourselves. And locking it into ProfessorMesser.com/QA, that page allows us to calculate these out. We can really see how many people chose those particular answers. That might help as you go through this. A wireless network. If you've ever been through a hospital lately, there's all kinds of wireless networks in hospitals, on campuses, in corporate. The interesting part is that they're used so differently, yet it's exactly the same standards everywhere you would go. So I think that's useful too. Hopefully you can break this answer out. This is when you really do need to know the specifications themselves, because you might run into this. You might be part of a job that goes into one of these places. You see their existing wireless network. You need to identify what they have, and they need to recommend to keep it, manage it, configure it, or upgrade it. And you're going to need to really figure out the best way to go through and do that. And knowing these standards allows you to do that very, very quickly. You don't want to be the one that walks in and says, I'm an expert in your wireless network. Let's see what you have here. First, let me Google. That's not what you want to do. People often say, why do I have to memorize these things? Oh, because you don't want to be the one that has to Google them. That's why. These are things you really should know off the top of your head to figure this out. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a hospital uses a wireless network using 2.4 gigahertz with a maximum throughput of 54 megabits per second. Which standard is the hospital using? Are they using 802.11a, B, G, N, or AC? 44% of you say it's 802.11g. 20% say it's 802.11a. 19% said 802.11b. We also have 10% that said N and 8% that said AC. We almost have a nice curve there with 802.11g right in the middle at 44%. And although it was not a majority of the answers, those of you that did answer 802.11g did choose the right one. It does operate in the 2.4 gigahertz range, and its maximum throughput is 54 megabits per second. So it's time for this hospital to upgrade. So if you were to walk into this particular facility and they said, what should we do? You could say, well, I know that you kept this in so that it could be backwards compatible with these other devices that you were running, but I think everything's now updated. It's almost you have to work the other direction. You have to now figure out what all these devices are, especially in an environment like a hospital where there are a number of wireless devices with embedded wireless. Maybe these are devices that haven't been swapped out in years. You may need to have an 802.11g compatible access point. The problem, of course, is that it uses the 2.4 gigahertz range, which is super noisy and super busy. These days, it's so much better if you can upgrade to something that uses 5 gigahertz range. So the answer here would indeed be 802.11g. That is the standard that works on 2.4 gigahertz and does have a maximum throughput of 54 megabits per second. So that's why I think if you look at these, for example, 802.11a, one of the reasons we chose that one is because it's a 5 gigahertz technology. 802.11b, 2.4 gigahertz. 802.11n, options for both. And then 802.11ac is 5 gigahertz only to be able to do that. And perhaps it might have a little bit less range, but these days having more frequencies available might be the balancing act for this. So you get a few options to be able to use this. In this case, if you're looking for something at 2.4 gigahertz and 54 megabits per second, then 802.11g is absolutely the place you should be. Answer C is that correct answer. So well done for these. If you've gone through these questions on these study groups, you know I write these questions to be at least somewhat compatible with what's expected of you for the exam. If you looked at other questions online, there's some really bad practice questions online. There are questions online that I've seen that have nothing to do with the exam objectives. They're asking for information that has nothing to do with what you'll find on the exam, or they're just badly written questions with badly written answers, and they do more to confuse than actually make things work any better. So what I did was write my own set of questions. I thought if there's not any good questions out there, we need to make some. And so from the very beginning, I wrote from the ground up, brand new questions. You've never seen those in a study group. You've never seen these in our daily pop quiz. 370-page book of questions. There it is. This is the Core 2 book. It looks exactly the same on the Core 1 book. 3 separate exams are in here, 90 questions exam in each, 5 performance-based questions in each one of them, so 15 of those total. Let's do one. I've got the book right here. Let's do another question. So here's a question from the practice exam book. We'll do A11, which asks, a user is powered on their computer and received the message, operating system not found. A check of the system shows that the hard drive cables are properly connected. Which of the following would be the next best troubleshooting step? Would it be to boot to safe mode, replace the boot drive, restore from a known good backup, or check for removable drives? Now, if you just want the answer, then you can just click the quick answer option here in the PDF, or you can flip over to page 31. I like to go to the details, though. I'm going to click on the details, which takes me to page 44 in my PDF, where it gives me the question again here at the top, and it tells me that the answer is D, check for removable drives. And like many practice exams, I give you an explanation of why that is the right answer. But as I mentioned before, where you really learn things is when you get a question wrong and you understand why you got a question wrong. So for every question in my practice exams book, I go through each incorrect answer and I tell you why each incorrect answer is really incorrect. So that even if you get it wrong, you've now learned why it was wrong. And in fact, you may even want to read the other wrong answers to see why those were marked as wrong, to see if you really were thinking the right way. And now you have effectively 4 times as much information from this single question than you would get from any other type of test question that you would find online or anywhere else. Also, if you scroll down just a little bit more, you'll see there's a QR code. You can even use that now if you want to point your camera at the screen. Or I have a link here that will take you to the 221,001 Objective 5.3 troubleshooting hard drives. And there's a link right on the screen that brings up the video on my website so that you can watch the video that describes the topic associated with this particular question. So that is my practice exams book. And let's go back to the original question. I'll click the back button in my browser and it goes right back to where I started. And then I can go to the next question that's on my list. So this is something that I hope can help some of you as you're going through your studies. This is a little bit more content and more things you can use before you go into your exam to quiz yourself to really see if this is something that might help you. This is my Core 1 practice exams for the A+ certification. You can find out more about it at professormesser.com/core1pe, or simply use the links on my website, the pull-down menus, to find the practice exams. Let's do another question. I've got another one available for you. Here's a short question. Try to give you a little bit of a trivia question here that asks, which of these technologies is used by ECC to identify errors? Does it use striping, multi-channel, DDR, mirroring, or parity? Which of these technologies is used by ECC to identify errors? Is it striping, multi-channel, DDR, mirroring, or parity? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See how well you do with understanding what technologies are used by ECC to identify errors. I don't want to give too much away. Almost said some additional information. I'm trying not to do that. We're going to stick it right there. And so that this is all the information you get. Just like the actual exam, the reading a question on the exam, the answers are specific to what's in that question and what's in that question only. I see a lot of people taking practice questions or telling me about exam questions, and they kind of think outside the scope of the question. Yeah, but if I was in that situation, I would do this other thing. Well, that other thing wasn't one of your available options. So you got to reel that back in. Here are your 5 options, or 4 or 5 options. These are the only ones you get to choose from. Maybe the option you'd like to do just isn't available to you. Maybe your department doesn't handle that. Maybe security doesn't allow you to do that. Maybe you're an MSP and you're not allowed. It's not in the contract to do that. You've got these 4 things. Which one is it? In this case, 5 things. Which of these technologies is used by ECC to identify errors? Striping, multi-channel, DDR, mirroring, or parity? See how well you do with this one. And if you've ever plugged in and used ECC, I don't want to say anymore. We're not gonna We're not going to go any. I keep wanting to give you more information. Let me help you with this. What does it mean? What are these terms? What is associated with this? I don't want to tell you. We're not gonna give you that little bit of information. We're gonna sit here and watch the answers come in, and then finally we will figure it out as we go through this. This, I think, is one of these questions. I guess you could apply this. This could be a question you might find in another exam. Sure, maybe. But it certainly is a topic and a set of technologies, and everything listed in here comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you're looking through these answers and you don't know what one of these answers is, make a note of that. You need to go back to the exam objectives, find that, watch the video, read the book, learn more about those topics. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of these technologies is used by ECC to identify errors? Is it striping, multi-channel, DDR, mirroring, or parity? And you can see that 55% of you said parity. So we got a little bit of a majority there, just over the majority. 22% said DDR. There's a good number there. Almost a quarter of you said DDR. And then single digits for striping, multi-channel, and mirroring. Well, if you've ever worked with ECC, the method of understanding error correcting memory is a little bit of a challenge. Like, how does it know when there's an error? Well, it's because whenever traffic or whenever information is put into this ECC memory, it has an extra bit that it creates. That extra bit is a parity bit. So we're used to having a byte of information is 8 bits. Well, with parity or with ECC memory, it's 8 bits plus 1, and the plus 1 is the parity memory. In the case of ECC, it's what we call even parity. The parity bit makes it an even number. So, for example, let's create parity. I've got 3 bytes of data here written out as 8 bits apiece. Let's figure out what the parity bit would be for this data. So let's take this first byte right here at the top, 111 0 0 1 1 1. Let's count the number of ones. So the number of ones is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an even number. 6 ones is an even number, which means that we're not going to put another one in there. If we put another one, it'd be an odd number, and this is even parity, so we put a 0 as the parity bit. Let's do another one, see if we can figure it out. So here's a byte that is 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0. How many ones are in that? There's only 1. And 1 is an odd number. I need even parity, so I'm going to put a 1 into the parity bit and make it an even number. That's all parity really is. Let's do this last one. 1 0 0 1 1 0 0 0. Count the number of ones. 1, 2, 3. That's an odd number. I need an even number, so I'm going to put one more 1 into the list. Now we have parity. So that's where those parity bits come from. Now let's say that in this first byte, as it's going through the system, that one of these bits gets flipped. And the one at the very beginning is turned to a 0. So this byte is 0 1 1 0 0 1 1 1 0. Wait a second, with the parity bit of 0, we've got an odd number. So something messed up there. We got a corruption of the data, and because the parity bit was there, we were able to identify that bit got flipped, and we can throw out that byte and either have the application reprocess the data, request the data again, see if we can retrieve the data again, but we are at least notified that something happened with this. Now, if it is the case that we're able to recognize which bit that is, we could even have the memory correct it. Error correcting memory allows you to correct the bit that got flipped based on the parity bits. And there's a lot more that goes into doing that, far beyond the scope of what you would need to know for the A+, but it's an important part of this, and being able to have that error correcting memory take advantage of that. And that's why in this case, parity is the technology that would allow ECC to identify and perhaps ultimately correct the error that is there. 21% of you said DDR. The dual data rate describes a type of memory. In fact, you could have an ECC DDR, but DDR itself is not used to identify errors. It is used to understand what you would be able to connect to your computer, the type of memory you would plug into your computer that may or may not use ECC. 8% of you said striping. Striping is a way that to manage data on storage devices. And if you lose one of those storage devices, it keeps all of your systems perhaps even up and running if you're using striping with parity. Or it allows you to have very fast transfers because you are sending only half of the information to individual devices. Striping is fantastic for storage, but not used at all in memory to be able to identify errors. We have multi-channel. Multi-channel is a type of memory technology that splits the memory access into multiple memory modules, sort of like striping. It's the memory version of striping, if you want to look at it that way, is multi-channel. Obviously, very useful for speed, but doesn't help ECC identify any errors. And then mirroring, a term that we use for storage devices when we're getting a copy of one drive and copying everything, creating a duplicate of the data on that drive, effectively a mirror image of the drive. Very useful for storage devices, but not used by ECC or memory to identify errors. The best choice, the only choice in this case, answer E, parity. 58% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. I've got another question that we can pull out. Here we go, right here with this one. This question asks, which of these cloud models provides only CPU, storage, memory, and network access? Is it PaaS, SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, or private? Which of these cloud models provides only CPU, storage, memory, and network access? Is it PaaS, SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, or private? See if you know this one. Maybe this cloud, now that we're moving into cloud-based technologies here, that's certainly something we have to know for the exam. So step through all of these cloud-based technology answers and see if you can find the one that fits best for this particular question. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. We'll figure it out. If you've ever gone through the process of working with cloud-based technologies, they all start to blend together after a while. It really helps if you're able to delineate and compartmentalize them into different ways of understanding what is happening. And I think that's an important part on the exam to understanding this as well. So make sure you're familiar with the cloud, how these things separate out. There's a number of cloud-based questions on the A+, on the Network+, on Security+, and others as well. So I think that's where you should really focus, is go to the exam objectives, step through each one of these, understand what they do. And of course, in my videos, I separate these out so that you can understand where one type of model stops and where the other one starts. Hopefully this can help you if you're trying to get this locked in. The cloud section, not very big, but you could get a number of questions that come directly from that particular section. So it's definitely worth your time to study a little bit more from that cloud section. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of these cloud models provides only CPU, storage, memory, and network access? Is it PaaS, SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, or private? 66% of you say it's IaaS. 15 and 13% say PaaS and SaaS, respectively. And then single digits, 5% said hybrid, 3% said private. So if you're ever in the process of trying to break down these different cloud-based systems, knowing these abbreviations is really going to help you. The abbreviation IaaS stands for Infrastructure as a Service. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as Hardware as a Service. So that might help as well. You can think of that, oh, you just give me the hardware. Sometimes infrastructure as a service might also include the operating system, but it doesn't go much further beyond that. Usually it is the basics you need to get up and running. So the basics are some CPU, some memory, some network, some storage, maybe an operating system, or you might be required to load the operating system yourself either one of those. So if you're ever working with a cloud provider and they're just giving you an empty machine effectively, then this is the infrastructure as a service model. It's up to you to load the applications, to load the data, to load everything you would need on top of that on this IaaS infrastructure. If you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, for example, it's effectively infrastructure as a service. They've gave me everything in the operating system and said, all right, load up what you need. All right, I'll load up my web server software. I'll load up a database. I'll load up everything I need to get this running. So that would be a very useful way to remember this, that infrastructure as a service was the right answer, and 65% of you did choose that. Now, there are two others as a service listed here, the SaaS, the PaaS. You have software as a service with SaaS. This is when everything is just turnkey, where you don't have to do anything. You just show up and log in and you're using this service. So if you are using, maybe you use Google Mail, maybe you use Outlook 365, that's software as a service. You didn't have to load up the software. You didn't have to load up the email system. You don't have to manage it or maintain it. You don't have to patch it. You don't have to upgrade it or downgrade it. You just log in and use it. That's software as a service. The one in the middle between infrastructure as a service and software as a service is platform as a service, where they give you the infrastructure you need and they give you everything. They give you building blocks that you could use to create an application, but nothing is built. It's the Lego block of cloud computing. Platform as a service means that you have to put the blocks together to build your own application, which can be very, very powerful. It'll give you plenty of flexibility. You build out the application to work the way you want it to be. You don't have to rely on somebody else's interpretation of it. And you don't have to start from scratch on something like infrastructure as a service. You can at least use the building blocks they already have. That would be platform as a service. Hybrid is a cloud model where some of it's public and some of it's private. So you might have your own internal private cloud components, and you might connect to other public cloud components like something in Azure or Amazon Web Services. And private, obviously, are cloud services that you would have in-house only, that no one else would have access to. This is an important concept in cloud computing, especially from the exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with all of these. There's an entire video on this, section 4.1, Cloud Models. If you have any questions, that's a good place to start. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I'll be glad to send you an email with the information you need to be able to prove that you were here. It's not something that's required, but it can certainly be useful to have that. The way that you would do that is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that link, brings up a form. In that form, put your name, your email address. Put the subject line as September 2021 Core 1 A+. Just something where I can understand which one of these study groups this came from. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, hybrid. Hybrid is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you'd like to put anything else into the body of that message down underneath, you're more than welcome to do so. I read through every single one of these. This would then allow me to see, when I receive this, which one of these study groups you watched. I will send you an email, a digitally signed email, that says you must have watched this because you knew what the super secret code word was, and here's your 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. So at least you've got some options there. Hybrid is that super secret code word of the month. We've got time for more questions, so let's do another one. On our list is this question that says, the drive in a RAID 1 array, a drive in a RAID 1 array has failed. Which of the following would return the array to a fully operational state? Would I replace all drives and restore from backup? Would I replace the bad drive and resync? Would I replace all drives and resync? Or would I replace the bad drive and restore from backup? A drive in a RAID 1 array has failed. Which of the following would return the array to a fully operational state? Would it be to replace all drives and restore from backup? Would it be to replace the bad drive and resync? Would it be to replace all drives and resync? Or would it replace the bad drive and restore from backup? I guess the question really should be, which of the following would be the best way to return the array to a fully operational state? Because technically, I think I got more than one right answer there. So stick into this list, which of the following would be the best way to return the array to a fully operational state? I guess I should have been clearer with that. Well, now I don't have to be clear with that because we're here live. We can do this. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See how you do with this one. Oh, it's a RAID question. Whenever you get into questions about RAID, this becomes a little bit of a challenge. There's so many different RAID types. Fortunately, the CompTIA exam objectives have a very specific list of RAID. So that's why I tell people this is one where you don't have to know some of these crazy RAID types. There's a very specific set of RAID types that you need to know. Make sure you stick to those in the exam objectives. So that might help you as you go through this. Maybe that will give you some perspective as you go through this. This is one I think if you've ever worked with RAID, you at some point will be faced with a drive failing and how to restore. So you need to know what those differences are. And it varies depending on the RAID type, obviously. So you need to know that. This will be good if you ever in this situation. Let's see how we do with this. We've got a number of you that have already answered. So let's see if we know what the answer is. The question again, a drive in a RAID 1 array has failed. Which of the following would return the array to a fully operational state? Would it be to replace all drives and restore from backup? Would it be to replace the bad drive and resync? Would it be to replace all drives and resync? Or would it be to replace the bad drive and restore from backup? If we want to choose the best answer and not just any answer, we need to know what the answer might be. But 60% of you said to replace the bad drive and resync. 36% of you said to replace the bad drive and restore from backup. 4% said to replace all drives and restore from backup. And 0% said to replace all drives and resync. Well, the first thing that we need to know with this is what RAID 1 is. RAID 1 is, for as long as we know what RAID 1 is, we can answer this one. But there is a chart that comes from my 5.3 video, Troubleshooting Hard Drives, where you can see that RAID 1, which is mirroring, which means that every drive in a RAID 1 array has a duplicate of it in the array as well. So if you lose one of those RAID 1 mirror drives, you're still up and running because you have an exact duplicate of that drive in that array. That's one of the beauties of RAID 1. That's why you would use RAID 1, is to have that duplication. And the array will continue to work as long as that one single drive that's left is operational. This is what's great about RAID 1. I was working very early on in my career with a company where we were a service provider. We went out to a customer site to do an upgrade to one of their servers. And we get there and there's an error message on the server console that says the drive has failed. Now it was a RAID 1 array that we had configured in this server. The drive failed months ago. Nobody knew it because the system continued to run. Was there a message on the server? Yep. Did it beep and make noise? It did, but it was in another room. The users, though, saw nothing different. Same response time. The data was still available. Why would they need to call? We really did a bad job at monitoring that system if it went months before ever getting our hands on that. So that's one of those situations where you really do have to keep an eye on it. What if we had lost another one of those drives? Then we'd been in trouble. So fortunately, we saw the drive had failed. We removed the bad drive. We replaced it with a good drive, and we clicked the resync button. And it took everything that was on the drive that was left and resynced everything to the brand new drive, bringing it back into a mirrored state. and everything continued to run. We didn't have to bring down the system. We didn't have to restart. We didn't have to remove all the drives. We didn't have to restore from backup because it was RAID 1. So that's a good example of how that mirrored drive can really, really help you quite a bit. Now, when I mentioned in here that the question should have said, which of the following would be the best way to return the array to fully operational state, I said it that way because if you answered A, replace all drives and restore from backup, that would technically work, wouldn't it? You're taking all the drives out, you're replacing every drive, you're restoring from a backup. You might have lost some data there, but let's say your backup was completely up to date. That would work, but it would take a long time. You'd be replacing drives that were good. That's not necessarily what you want to do. So although A technically would answer this badly written question or not specific enough question that I wrote, not the best thing that you should be doing. So although 4% of you chose that, I'm going to give you half credit. How about that? The 4% of you. We know that answer B was the right answer. Replace the bad drive and resync. We don't have to replace every drive. We don't have to restore from backup, so that's good. 34% have said replace the bad drive and restore from backup. You don't need to restore from backup because the system is continuing to run. It's a RAID 1 array with mirroring. So we don't need to replace anything but the bad drive, and we don't need to restore from backup. So that's the main reason that particular answer is wrong, is restoring for backup is unnecessary. In answer C, only 1% said replace all drives and resync. You don't have to replace every drive, just the ones that are bad, and then resync. And by the way, if you replace all the drives, there's nothing left to resync. So that one won't work at all. If you try that one, bad idea. Don't do that. That's not what you want to do in those cases either. I know that we are at the top of the hour, but let's fit in one more question, shall we? I know I usually don't do quite this many questions in the study group, but we're going to do one more because the chat room's been so awesome. That's why. A phone has received a tower update over the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would best describe this update? Is it PRL, IMEI, iOS, IMSI, or PRI? A phone has received a tower update over the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would best describe this update? Is it PRL, IMEI, iOS, IMSI, or PRI? You think you know the answer? Lock it in. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you know what it is. I have to figure out what all of these questions might be. If you're someone who's familiar with mobile devices, then you're probably in pretty good shape with this one. This is a set of questions, and all of these acronyms are part of the exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with what all of them are. They are real things. All of those are real. So I'm not making any of those up. So if you don't recognize one, write it down, make a note of it, put it in your notepad, put it in whatever you use to make notes, and go back to it later and figure that out. So you'll figure out what that happens to be. Phone has received a tower update over the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would best describe this update? We'll have to figure it out. These are directly from the exam objectives. And please don't, in the chat room, please don't mention what you may or may not have seen on your exam. That would be, of course, a violation of your candidate agreement. We don't want that to happen either. This is one cellular network connections and some of the cellular technologies are absolutely in the exam objectives. You should absolutely be familiar with them. In fact, they'll help you if you ever go and update your phone. You have to go to the local cellular company's store and talk to them about troubleshooting. And they're talking about things like IMEIs and IMSIs and PRIs and PRLs and all of that. You'll know what they're talking about. So pretty nice to have that. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a phone has received a tower update over the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would best describe this update? Is it PRL, IMEI, iOS, IMSI, or PRI? And we're all over the place. 37% said a PRL. 23% said PRI. 21% said IMEI. 14% said IMSI. And finally, single digits, only 4% said iOS. Wow, we're just not sure on this one. If you are receiving an update, a preferred roaming list, a PRL, this is common to CDMA networks like Verizon and Sprint. This is a list or a database that tells your phone what towers it should be connecting to. And it's usually updated over the air, OTA, as they say. So I think if you ever get in a situation where you're trying to figure out, why is my phone not connecting to the right tower, or having a problem with this phone knowing where the right tower is, it may not have received its PRL update. So that's where that comes from. That's different than a PRI update, the product release instructions. This contains information for the radio, for the transmitter and receiver that's inside the phone. ID numbers, network codes, country codes, and other pieces of information. This is also an OTA update for PRL and PRI. Both of those are important to know. And that's why, in this case, knowing that a preferred roaming list with a tower update is going to provide this, the PRL, the preferred roaming update, is the first answer in here, answer A. 38% of you got that one right. Now we also know why the PRI was not the right answer with 23% of you. The IMEI and IMSI for the equipment and the subscriber information are unique values specific either to the physical device or specific to you as the physical person. So you may find that. And iOS, of course, is Apple's iOS with the lowercase I. That's how we know it's Apple's iOS and not Cisco's iOS, is the operating system that runs on their mobile devices. Which reminds me, I need to update my mobile device. There's always something new coming out. I think a new update came out. We got to go make that happen as well. So this is one that if you answered A, PRL, preferred roaming list, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour. Really, we already hit the end of the first hour, but there's more to come. We got another hour of Q&A. Stick around for the call-in show after this. But of course, you should always go out. I've mentioned multiple times in the study group to go get the objectives. You will find the objectives at professormesser.com/objectives. Make sure you get your hands on those. There's a link that will take you right to the CompTIA website. Make sure you go to the CompTIA website directly. If you don't go to my site, just type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you there. I was laughing because in the chat room, I'm with Tim PPA99, who says, there's so many acronyms. What in the world? Well, this is the problem with IT. We use a lot of acronyms. And all I can tell you is, wow, don't take Network Plus. If you think the acronyms in A Plus are bad, you will just be over it with the acronyms for Network Plus. So we use a lot of acronyms. I don't know what to tell you. Security Plus, I think, is probably also pretty close to what Network Plus did. So make sure you're familiar with that. I mentioned at the beginning of this study group that we've already changed some of the dates for study groups later this month. So if you're planning to attend our Network Plus or Security Plus study groups, they're both next week. That doesn't happen very often. So make sure you always look at the event calendar to know when the next event is going to be. It can be found at professormesser.com/calendar. You'll see that there. Our next study group, though, is Thursday. September the 16th is our next A Plus study group. We'll do a Core 2 A Plus study group on Thursday. And I've got others for October that are already scheduled for October the 12th or October 14th. Of course, those might change too. So always check with the exam or with the event calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when that event is going to be. We've got more to come. We're not done. We've got an after show. I'll open up the phone lines. We'll take questions from the chat room. This is the part where you ask me the questions instead of me asking you all the questions. Don't forget about the course notes and practice exams at professormesser.com/1001success. And don't pay full price for your voucher. Don't have to hunt around for a super secret coupon code. You just go to the Professor Messer website and they're already discounted. professormesser.com/vouchers. And it's a great way to support the website as well. And of course, we have daily pop quiz questions for A+. You can find those at professormesser.com/Twitter/Instagram/LinkedIn. And of course, we got all our videos on /YouTube. You may want to check back tomorrow when all of those Network Plus videos drop, as they say. The videos drop. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what we'll do. Plenty of videos coming out. We got a lot more to do in this study group, a lot more to go through. Thank you for being here in the first hour. Stick around for the after show, and thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, now I get to push a lot of buttons on this side and see if I can get the phone lines up and running. This is always the hardest part of the show for me. Let's host a show. Let's click a button, and then I'll show you how you can also do this. We'll go through this section. If I can find the right app, the right application here, because I have to change out some of my information on the screen, and I need to call into my own show. How does that work? Well, it's software as a service. The call-in part of my show is cloud-based. You aren't calling me, you're calling the cloud, and then I'm controlling it from my screens here. That's crazy. Yep, that's how it works. So we will make all of that happen here in just a moment. Oh, I can't hear it. It's now saying something, and I don't know what it said. It said something like me calling in. If I was paying attention, we'd be able to make this happen. This is when I need to hire somebody. There we go. Now we can hear everything that's happening.
Thank you for.
Well, you're welcome. And I type in some special things here, and I hit a pound sign, and the nice lady says,
your 6-digit PIN.
I will do that. I'll put in my 6-digit PIN, and then the nice lady says,
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. Well, that means that you can also, now that I'm calling in, you can call in. There's the phone number. There are two ways. I will, of course, take questions directly from the chat room. So I'm watching these go by in the chat room. So if you're watching this on YouTube or on the Professor Messer website, it's the same chat room. If you would like to call in using voice communication, it's a toll-free number in the continental U.S., 855-785-7545. That's 855-785-RJ45. There's also a way to call in internationally for free. You use Skype, which will allow you to call a toll-free number with no Skype minutes required, but you have to put a +1 at the beginning. So put +1, 855-785-7545, and you can do the same thing, where figure out where all of those happen to go. This is the easiest way, either in the chat room to put questions in there, and of course, you can call in and we'll take questions from the call-in lines as well. Let's start with going to Georgia. We'll take the 678 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. My name's Justin. I'm calling from Georgia.
Hey, Justin from Georgia. What can we do for you?
Hi. So first off, I really want to thank you for all the work you put into these courses. I got my A+, my Net Plus, and my Security Plus thanks to all of your videos. And but before I ask my question, I just really want to endorse those practice exams. I going into my A+ and Net Plus, all three of those exams, I failed those my first time, and then I ended up passing them later on. But my Security Plus, I got that my first time around, and that was because I actually went out and got those practice exams. So just everyone watching, please get those practice exams. They're very, very useful.
So glad to hear. Thank you.
So that being said, my question, so despite having those certifications, I'm still kind of hesitant about the networking side of things. And so what I'm looking at, my end game is cybersecurity. And so I'm looking at a degree from WGU, a cybersecurity degree. And on the other side of that, I'm also looking at the CCNA. So I'm just kind of trying to get your opinion on whether I should, I'm trying to get that more of that networking background. And I just got this job in this help desk job already. So, but I'm just trying to figure out if I should pursue that CCNA and get more of that networking down before I go on and do this cybersecurity degree, which doesn't really have a lot of networking as part of the program.
This is one of the challenges. I understand why people want to jump into the security side of things, because it seems like it's an interesting place to work. And I will agree, someone who has a background in cybersecurity. I worked for a next generation firewall company and just loved it. It was great types of things to do. And security is such an interesting part of the field that I understand why people want to be able to get that cybersecurity knowledge or work on the cybersecurity side. The problem you may have seen, if you've ever tried to look for an entry-level position in cybersecurity, not a lot of those. Not very many that you will run into. Cybersecurity and cybersecurity jobs are usually positions that require you to have quite a foundation in a lot of different areas. You need to understand operating systems. You need to understand networking, perhaps at the expert level in some cases. And then on top of that, you need to layer on the security part of it. So there's so much that you have to know just to get a job in security. One of the things that I did in my career is I started on kind of the help desk side, moved into networking, which positioned me very well to move into security. So I hear that particular path that you're describing is actually a pretty well used path to be able to get into security. If you're ever wanting to see what it takes, go find some of these security jobs. Maybe find one that mentions at least maybe entry level in security, and look at all of the requirements they have for somebody starting on the security side. The one place where I think you may be able to find entry-level security that doesn't require a lot of experience or knowledge is probably in a security operations center or SOC. Those are effectively help desk positions, but with a security slant. And I don't know if it really positions you easily to move up in security from there, but it certainly gives you a lot of experience on security. Now, you mentioned two different things. You mentioned a formal degree, which would be, I mentioned a 2 or 4 year degree like WGU and other places that do this. But then you also mentioned certifications. And I try to explain to people all the time, you're right to combine those things together because one doesn't replace the other. The formal degree provides a certain set of credentials and experience that's important, and certifications provide a certain credential and experience that is important. And employers are looking for both of those. They would love someone who has both a formal degree and certifications, along with some other things. I have a video, and I think it's even linked already in this particular YouTube video description on how to get a job in IT with no experience. Now, you're already one step ahead of that. You got a help desk position. You've now got a job in IT. And I think if you wanted to build a set of stepping stones to get you into security, I could not more highly recommend you get that knowledge in networking. You really need to be an expert in networking to be able to do a lot of the things that are required on the cybersecurity side. I mentioned that coming from a networking background and having worked in cybersecurity, how much most of my day was networking, quite honestly, with a layer of security on top of it. So if you're wanting to do anything with firewalls, VPNs, authentication protocols, being able to do SIMs and logs and data analysis and reporting, it's all networking. Most of what I just described are all networking foundation type topics. So make sure that if you're planning to get into security, I think it's a great idea to get your CCNA first and then move into some higher level security, or maybe then move into a networking position, move into network administration, network management. And from there, most of the people I met and worked with on the cybersecurity side of things were all people that came from the networking side. So it's a really nice path to be able to position yourself very well to work on the security side. And these days, we need so many people. We have such a set of openings on the security side. We're trying to pull people into that as quickly as possible. Arming yourself with this networking knowledge is only going to be able to help you when you finally get into an opportunity where there might be a position open on the security side. So I think that's a great path and a great idea, Justin.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. Whenever I go into thinking about the people I used to work with, I started working for manufacturers pretty early on in my career. I worked for third-party value-added reseller and resellers of computer equipment. I worked for an insurance company. And then I made the move from working for kind of the corporate America arm of technology and moved into the manufacturer side. So worked for network management companies and security companies. And what was great is I got to go from place to place to place to place and meet hundreds, thousands of people across hundreds of different companies. And it was great because I would meet a lot of people on the networking side when I did network management and network troubleshooting. And then when I moved into security, I would go back to these companies, and the people that I used to work with on the networking side, I was now working with on the security side because they moved up in their organization into the security area. So it's a very good path to go there. If you're ever wondering, am I studying the right thing? Always go back to what people are posting for jobs. Go look at LinkedIn jobs. Go look at dice.com. Go to the whatever the most popular job posting site is in your area, and the link recruiters of the world. All of those are great places to go to see what people are asking for, because then you could look at that and go, wait a second, a lot of people are asking for this particular thing. Let me see if I can go get that particular credential because so many people are asking for it. It's a great way to do a sanity check and to see exactly, am I looking for the right thing? I think it's a great place to go. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 571 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Hello, caller. Are you there? Am I on mute, caller? 571? Have I got you? I've got you here. Let's see if I can hear anything. Nope. Got nothing there. We'll stick you back in the queue. That's how this usually works for me. Let's go to another call, the 646 area code. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Is this me?
It is you. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Hi, I'm calling from New York. How are you?
Hello, New York. We're doing so good. What's your question?
Well, my question is that I'm working on my A+ certificate currently, and I'm, just trying to get into the IT field now.
Great.
And I was just wondering, what you feel about the trajectory of help desk in IT. I'm learning about it right now, and as I'm going, I feel as though everything is going to be automated, as if we don't need any help desk anymore, where everything will just fix itself on its own with no human interaction necessary. What are your thoughts on that?
Let me tell you about when I first heard about sort of this hands-off idea and automation of networks and computing systems. And the place I worked had this idea of a dark room where instead of having all of these people that were working in here, we could effectively turn off the lights, close the door, and everything would be automated. We would not need anyone in this room. We would not need anyone to take care of this. That was 1996. So it's something we've been talking about forever.
Yeah.
As it turns out, these systems that we use, these operating systems, these applications, these networking technologies are incredibly complex. And although we, of course, automate as much of this as we can, we were automating it back in 1996, and we automate constantly with these technologies through the years, there's always something that a technologist needs to know about these because the industry itself continues to grow. The number of very complex systems that we're implementing continues to grow. The complexity of the systems that are already complex continue to get more complex. This is one of those scenarios where someone who needs to write an article and has a deadline writes an article about the death of the help desk and how help desks are going away. If you go back to when the iPad was introduced, they were saying laptops are no more. No one will ever use another laptop. How'd that turn out? This is just something that
Right.
I think it's a bit of a pipe dream because you're never going to get rid of your help desk or everyone that's there. Certainly, organizations want to automate. It's a huge part of what we do in IT. And by the way, we've been automating in IT forever, not a new idea. I think they're talking about it being a new idea. It's not a new idea. We've been doing it forever. And that's why I always tell people, if you want to be a very good asset for your organization, get familiar. If you're a Microsoft organization, learn as much as you can about PowerShell. If you are a Microsoft organization with other things, or even as an adjunct to that, learn as much as you can about Python. If you can learn the fundamentals of PowerShell and Python, you will be unstoppable from an automation perspective. You'll be able to do things that you never thought you'd be able to automate because you now have all the skills and all of the tools available to make that happen. So I tell people all the time, yes, you will absolutely need a help desk position. This is how we get people into organizations and figure out if they're going to be a good fit. And there needs to be somebody to answer the phone, to fix problems that seem absolutely simple, or to at a very least to fix someone's password that got locked out. These are things that if you read online are frustrating, I think, to people who get into help desk positions, that they get questions that are so fundamental that the user on the other side has a hard time using the operating system, using the application, and they're not able to do what the help desk person feels are very fundamental things with their system. And in some cases, it makes people very frustrated. I think we should all kind of turn this around and realize how fantastic it is that users don't know how to use their mouse. I think it's great that they don't know how to use the operating system, because then they're going to call you. And you do know how to use that mouse. And you do know how to use the operating system. You do know how to use that application. You are the expert with those things, which makes you valuable, because those people that are trying to make those systems work don't want to know the intricacies of the operating system. They don't want to know how the network operates. They just need to know how to plug this information into the spreadsheet and get the output that they were hoping for. So as much as I think the industry, and especially IT management, would love to get rid of the overhead associated with a help desk and would automate the entire thing and turn off the lights, the reality is we've never been able to make that happen, and there's no way in the future, foreseeably, that I see anyone making that happen, at least not 100%. We're still got a tons of positions open for help desk. We got a tons of positions open for network and operating system and IT in general. Having jobs go away or disappear because we change the way we do things doesn't seem to be very viable at this point.
Well, then, Professor Messer, then a supplement question would be then, what would you say is a good supplement to A+? Because I'm only working on A+ currently. What would you say is a great supplement to it? That when future prospects look at me, they're like, hey, you've got, not only do you have A+, but you have XYZ. I'm wondering if you personally think I need an extra XYZ for that extra flair to be called in for work, so they know I'm prepared for the job. What would you say
I did a whole video on this called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience, and I put this into 4 different elements that you need. One of those elements is a certification. So having your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and people often say, which certification should I go get? And I say, I don't know. What certification are the hiring managers asking for? You're asking the wrong person. You should be asking the hiring managers what they want and go get that. Don't ask me. I'm not hiring. So that's the first place you go, certification. Certainly an important part of it. Another element really right alongside it, and I mentioned this earlier, is a formal education. A 2-year degree, a 4-year degree are things that employers are still asking for. Not every employer asks for this, but the majority do. And even if it's not something that's going to help you immediately in this entry-level position, you will find that a 4-year degree does help you later on if you're trying to move up into some type of management position. So having a formal degree can really help. The third piece, or the third element in this mix, is practical experience. Now, the problem is that if you don't have a job in IT currently, it's that catch-22 of how do I get practical experience if I can't get a job and the job needs practical experience? There's a problem there. But there's a lot of things you can do yourself in a lab at home with your own equipment or on your own systems that will give you practical experience that the employer may be looking for. For example, you can download Microsoft Server, set up an Active Directory infrastructure, build out a bunch of users, configure policies that you can push out to those users, all in a home lab with evaluation software. I have good examples of doing this with operating systems and with firewalls in that video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I think what that brings is a story. If you can sit in front of a prospective employer and say, I know that this is an entry-level position. You don't expect people to already be knowledgeable in the intricacies of Active Directory, but I did set up an Active Directory configuration at home, and I set up some policies that I pushed out, and I reset some passwords, and I did all of these things that got me familiar with this, and I ran into problems, and here were the problems I ran into. If you're ever setting up a home lab of any kind, make sure you remember or write down what the problems were and how you solve them, because that's the story that you're going to have during the interview. That's what the employer's looking for, is that you faced an issue. How did you research what the problem was? And then ultimately, how did you resolve it? And it could be something simple. I guarantee if you're going to be setting up a Windows server with Active Directory, you're going to run into a DNS problem. So figure out what DNS problem you're having, document that. Now you've got a story for your interview. Lastly, there's a fourth element. It really wasn't something you asked about, but since I mentioned the video, the fourth element of the video is knowing someone who already works there. And it doesn't have to be someone in IT. It could just be someone who's an acquaintance, maybe somebody you met over LinkedIn, but someone that you can sit in an interview and say, I talked to this person that I know from the Cisco user group, from the Microsoft user group, from the LinkedIn forum, from the whatever, and they told me about this position that you guys had open. I'm really interested, and I'd love to work here. Oh, you know that person? Okay. So now you've got someone there that you can reference, and often that person's the one submitting your resume. So it came from someone trusted from within. That's a very valuable thing as well. All four of those, that's a 30-minute video. I really just gave you a basic overview, but that 30-minute video is chock full of information, and it's called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. It's on my YouTube channel. It's probably in this video description already. That might be a good place to go.
Oh, does that video include also the last element on how to find that friend?
It does.
Job, or is it
Absolutely does. Yeah, that's one of those things that it's sort of difficult in the industry getting started because you don't know anybody, but you effectively go to where everyone is. And we're starting to see more people do user group meetings. We're starting to see we're having more trade shows that are starting up again. Those are great places to meet people, and you should absolutely get in the mode of meeting someone and say, I'm really looking for a job. I'd love to send you a LinkedIn request if that's okay, and get added to someone's LinkedIn. Those can be very powerful. I've gone back to my LinkedIn over and over and over and over again to catch up with people that I worked with 3 jobs ago. I heard about an open position. I wanted to be sure they were aware of it, see if that's something they'd be interested in. I do this all the time. So it's something that if you people network properly, you can really have quite a set of resources available just right there in your LinkedIn.
That sounds very helpful. Thank you so much, Professor Messer.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. I think if you're someone who's in the place where you're trying to get that first job, it's never any one thing. It's a combination of things you put together, and you have to put together the strategy to outdo the other folks. It's one of those situations where the bear's attacking. You both sit down and you're taking your shoes off and you're putting on some running shoes, and the person's saying, what are you doing? Why are you putting on running shoes? There's a bear attacking. He says, yeah, but I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you. Same thing when you're getting a job. You don't have to be the faster than what's going on within everything that company has going on. You just have to be faster than everybody else who's putting in a resume. So that's the real key, is put on those running shoes and go faster than anyone else. Back to the phone lines. Thank you for holding for so long. The 215 area code. Thanks for holding. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, sir. My name is Matt. I'm calling from Fort Worth, Texas.
Hello, Matt.
How's it going, Professor?
Appreciate you calling. Doing fine here. What can we do for you?
I just had a two-part question for you. Basically, I'm currently working as a help desk support tier 2 for my company, and I just got done with a extensive program going through Google IT support certification.
Nice.
I recently took the 1001 a couple of months ago and kind of failed it. I missed it by 5 or 6 points.
Oh.
And I'm trying to strategize. Yeah. So I'm trying to strategize on taking it again after I just got done with the Google support course. I'm trying to go and take this 1001 and 1002 again. What are your suggestions on that? How can I go in there with more confidence and just get this over with?
Well, you're so close to passing. It almost feels that just 5 more minutes of whatever it is would help get you over the hump for that first exam. The first thing is that, and a lot of people don't realize this, you probably do, but for the people watching, the 1001 and 1002 exams are 2 separate exams. They are effectively standalone exams. There's very little overlap. If you had to look at a Venn diagram of those two, they barely overlap each other. They're really designed to be standalone exams. So I tell people, pick one of them, whichever one you'd like to take first. You can take them in either order. Study for that one exam. Study everything you need to know for just that one exam. Go take that one exam. Go pass that exam. Then you can forget all of that while you now shift gears and go study for the other exam. So I tell people, don't spend your time trying to cram both of these 2 exams into your brain, because that's a lot of content to be able to do that, unless you already have extensive experience in the industry. Well, that's a little bit different. I don't think most of us are in that position. So being able to take one at a time is very important. Now, on your first time through, there were obviously sections of questions that you missed, and CompTIA documents all of this for you. If you go log into your Pearson VUE login, there is a results page that shows doesn't show the questions you missed, but it shows the topics that of the questions you missed. So if you missed a lot of cloud questions, you'll see that section 4.1 and 4.2 shows up a lot. For example, on the 1001. So you should be able to look at that and say, well, I only missed 1 question from the first domain. I missed a bunch of questions in networking. I missed a bunch of cloud, and I did okay on the troubleshooting. Okay, well, now you know you need to practice more on the networking side. You need to practice more on the cloud side. So it might help focus your efforts on what you might want to go through rather than just having to go through everything. Maybe you can go through certain parts of what you need a little more help with. That can be a very valuable piece of information, and it's on your Pearson VUE login to be able to see that. The key for me, I think, is before you go in to the exam, take good practice exams. Find some good practice exams and see how well those evaluate what you know. If you have already gone through the Google course, it's not a one-to-one with the A+, but there's a lot of good content in there that might help you with the A+ content. So I bet after doing all of those things that you walk into the exam, I bet you're going to have a completely different experience on the 1001, as long as you know what tripped you up the first time and you can kind of do a self-correct before going in there again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate all that good advice. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Really quick. So I've been recently looking for maybe another job opportunity, or maybe trying to get, a better offer for my company I'm currently with. And a lot of things I saw out there that I don't have a lot of experience in is the SQL, dealing with databases and different things like that. What's a good site or a good program to actually use to get more familiar with the SQL stuff? I know I tried Microsoft Azure. I just got that set up, and I'm going through some of that. And also, I'm working on my kind of had another question for you, but we're working on my free NAS, to set up my own little home server.
Great.
And I saw that they had a lot of information on there as far as how to set up 80 accounts and different things like that. Do you think that that's a good way to go about learning how to set up SQL, or what are your thoughts?
It certainly can be. Now, in many organizations, there's a database group, there's a database team that handles the intricacies of a SQL-based database. But knowing the fundamentals of SQL can be incredibly useful, especially if you're doing network troubleshooting or application troubleshooting. So it can be Microsoft SQL, which is a great place to go. It's easy to get and easy to download and easy to install. There is plenty of SQL database. If you load up MySQL, which is readily available, open source, you can download it and run your own database server and get familiar with those things. There's some other databases that are out there would help, but those two are really the two biggest that you will run into in most environments is the Microsoft SQL Server and the MySQL, which is now from Oracle. Oracle's also another big database, but it's a little more difficult to get your hands on and run that as an evaluation to have those things there. The problem you run into is you can get into the weeds with databases very, very quickly. I would focus on databases from setting them up, connecting to them across the network, learning the fundamentals of what's in the database. What is a table? How do I modify the table? How do I remove a database? How do I back up the database? How do I restore the database? And that's really about it. Once you get above that, you're now handing that over to the database team. And if you're part of IT and you want to go into database and be part of that database team, then you'll want to go from there. You want to really focus on maybe some of Microsoft's database certifications and some of the other technologies that they have. The basics, though, especially on the networking side, on the security side, understanding how the database operates, understanding if it's sending information in the clear, how to make sure that it's secure, how to upgrade it, how to make sure you don't delete any data accidentally. Those are all great skills to have. And if you walk into a position for network management, operating system management, all of these things connect to a database somewhere. Whether you're responsible for managing and maintaining it, or maybe you get a cybersecurity role and you're in charge of the SIM. The SIM is one big database, and the more you know about how to manage it and use it, the better and easier it's going to be for you to do all of the other things associated with that application.
Okay, Professor, I thank you so much, man. You have a wonderful week, and I appreciate all your insights.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good one. Let us know how it goes.
All right.
That one of those things that I think we often run into when setting up these home labs is you can go deep into this. It's a little bit of a problem to find a project associated with these labs. Where do I even start? Okay, I installed the database. Now what do I do? You almost need a separate application to load in. That's why I mentioned MySQL, because there's so many third-party applications that integrate in with the MySQL database. If you're, for instance, on ProfessorMesser.com, I use WordPress. I have it talking to a MySQL database. So I have to at least be familiar with the backing up, restoring, modifying, updating, making changes to the configurations. I have to have at least some database administration skills in my pocket so that I can do that. If I make an update to my website, I have to make sure all my data is backed up. And all my data is in those databases. It's all SQL traffic. It's all SQL data. So pretty important. Back to the phone lines. Thanks for holding for so long. The 626 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Calling from California.
Oh, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I have my A+ certification, and I have a associate's degree in both network administration and systems administration.
Great.
Currently working on a help desk type role with a hardware manufacturer. They're one of the big ones, but the pay is not so good. I'm looking to get more into the network side, so I'm kind of having like a hard time trying to find a new kind of direction. Like I'm thinking about going into the Network Plus, Security Plus, or even like AWS. Like they have like a cloud practitioner certification.
Yep.
I was kind of looking to maybe some insight into what direction I should head into.
This is sort of the great thing about IT, and in some ways, kind of a difficult thing about IT, is that there's no direct path to go anywhere. You kind of have to build your own path, your own story through this. And IT is so broad that you can go almost any direction. So in my career, I have been field repair. Well, I've taken the equipment out into the field and installed it at the customer site. I have been corporate help desk. I have been corporate operating system desktop management. I have been network operation and network management. I have worked with network management manufacturers, and I've worked on the security side for a next generation firewall company. So there's my path that I took is probably very different. In fact, it was. If I talked to everybody in my last job when I was working for a third party was as that next gen firewall systems engineer. All the other systems engineers I worked with got there through a completely different path that I took. They came in through a software development. Some of them were electrical engineers. Some of them had a focus in application development. Some of them had a similar path to the one I followed, where they did tons of networking, but they were at the provider level rather than the enterprise level, which was great from my perspective, because whenever I had a problem or a question, I had all of these different, very diverse knowledge bases to go to ask the questions of my fellow peers. And we could have conversations about what they knew and what I knew. Those are great ways to do it. So the way I tell people to do this, you often get these questions in a job type interview where they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? This is IT. I have no idea. IT can go so many directions so quickly that 5 years is a lifetime in IT. You could have 2 new jobs in IT in 5 years. I often tell people, don't worry so much about 5 years or 10 years down the line. Worry about what's next. Focus on that first. What do you want to do next? And the great thing about IT is you figure out what you like to do. Do you like operating systems? Do you like networking? Do you like databases? Do you like email? Do you like data centers? Do you like the cloud? Do you like security? You can find all of these different, very broad areas. Find the ones that are interesting for you. Jump into that. Start learning everything you can about that particular area. Get certifications in that area. And find the employers that are looking to hire people for that particular niche, and then make the jump. That's your next jump into that area. So from a help desk, you can go to operating systems. You can go to desktop administration. You can go to networking. Those are 3 very common paths to take right out of a help desk. And all 3 of those have great upward mobility. I went to networking right out of help desk because I really had an interest in networking. I was literally walking down the hallway, and the existing networking team at the insurance company I worked with had this new device they had plugged in that was showing all of the packets going over the network. It was a product from Network General called the Sniffer. I think we all know what that is now. But back in those days, that type of technology was very expensive, and you just never ran into it. And here our company bought one. We had a Sniffer. And I said, whoa, you could see all of the data running over these copper wires that are in the wall. Tell me more about this. I was intrigued. And I started learning as much as I could about the networking, as much as I could about the middleware we were using, the connections to the mainframe, the higher speed technologies we had in place, the wide area network links we had to all of our different locations. And very quickly, I became very knowledgeable in very specific niches, and then moved into the networking team. So that was where I started to see there are these stepping stones where you can level up, and I don't have to think about 10 years down the road. I just have to think about the next one, because there's plenty of jobs out there for that next one. There's a lot of money that they're willing to pay if you're knowledgeable on that next level up. And every time you move up, you seem to be making more money. You have more responsibility. You have to know more, but that's how it's supposed to work. You become very knowledgeable in those niches, and now they're willing to pay you more money. So that's what I would do. Is it's sort of a combination of look in your area at what jobs are available, because you don't want to be studying for moving into a position that nobody wants to hire for. It'd be nice if you found out what the hot jobs were in your area. And if you suddenly find that everybody wants to hire someone familiar with cloud-based networking technologies, well, maybe I start to learn more about cloud-based networking. This is one of the things I always struggled with in IT, is I always had this fear of failure. It really wasn't a fear of failure, though. It was a fear of the unknown. I almost felt like, well, do I really want to try learning about cloud-based networking? I know nothing about cloud-based networking. I'm a little frightened at the idea of jumping into this with no knowledge. But then once I jumped into it, I said, oh, that's it? Oh, I got this. Okay, it's always much harder in your mind than it ever ends up being. And cloud-based networking, or whatever the next technology is that you move into, seems like it's daunting. But in reality, once you learn it, you got it. It's cold. That's the great thing about computers, of course, is that it's either a 1 or a 0. Every time you do it, it's exactly the same thing because it's a computer. So until you get into quantum computing, and then it's just a mess from there. But for the most part, it's something that we can predict, and we know what's going to happen next. That's a perfect position to be in. And the more you know about it, the easier it becomes. That's the way I would approach it. Find out what you want to do next, go after it, and you'd be surprised how easy it is then to jump into a job that has that.
Yeah. When hopping on the topic of hopping from position to position, how long do you think is a good time to stay at one particular company? Like I get a lot of different calls from people on LinkedIn and different recruiters saying that they have open positions. I find it kind of tedious to answer all of them, as some of them lead to nothing. And it kind of seems like a waste of my time in some points. Some of the different recruiters out there, I know they're all different, but as far as the longevity of the position, I'm learning still at this position. I know as soon as I stop learning, that's when I'm going to really try and search for another position that will maybe something different, that's not help desk, that I can learn something. I want to go into the network side, which is why I'm trying to do the Network Plus.
Great.
I think that'll help my resume look a lot better. But I find it kind of hard to juggle between the 5-day work week and the studying for another exam that I know is going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, there's that 24 hours in a day, and you just have to use all of them. That's the real key. Yeah. I found. The sort of the term we use in the industry is the 3-year plan. We sort of jokingly say that amongst each other in IT. Some people in the chat room say 2 years is the right number. The right number is whatever number the hiring manager thinks is the right number. And generally, staying at a place for more than a year is good. 2 years is probably better. I've stayed at some places on and off for 10 years. My last position was 7 years. That certainly is well beyond the 3-year plan. But if there's something going on and it's interesting, then why not stay? And they're paying you well, why not stay a little bit longer? The thing that I've always found that was the big determination in my mind is that if you're in a meeting and you're the smartest one in the room, you suddenly look around and realize, wait, everybody's asking me these questions, then it's time for you to go somewhere else. I think you should never be the smartest one in the room. I think it certainly makes you feel good if you're the smartest one in the room. What that really means is you got nowhere to go. There's nowhere to move from there. You can't move up from that position. So I always made a point of whenever that was, if I was the smartest one in the room, it's time for me to go to whatever the next job is, which is a perfectly reasonable explanation. If you're in a job for a year and you suddenly realize you're the smartest one in the room and you leave, which I've done. I've been in jobs for a year or even less than a year before I moved on. And I'm sure you'll be asked about it in the next interview. And they go, well, you're only at this job for a year. Why are you moving on so quickly? And it's perfectly reasonable to say, because what I found was that I hit the peak for all the technologies we were using and the type of systems in place. I was what people looked as the smartest person in the room for these things. I don't have anywhere to grow from there. I need to keep being to work with an organization that is going to challenge me, that has the newest technologies, that has the smartest people that I can learn from, and that's where I want to go the next step. So those are the things I always tell people. You don't want to move out after 6 months. That's not what you want to do. And at the very least, 1 or 2 years is good. 3-year plan, I think, makes sense in a lot of places, but it's really up to the hiring manager and how they interpret it. You certainly don't want to be moving from place to place to place to place every 3 months. And early on in your career, you certainly don't want to do that a lot. I've had my career has always been, I always did it on and off for some reason. I had a great job, and then I would move into a bad job. And then I'd move into a great job, and then I move into a bad job. So if you looked at my resume, I'd stay at a place for 5 years, then for 1, then for 6 years, then for 1, then for 7 years, then for 1. I would always have this bad job in the middle. I was obviously very bad at discovering that these were bad jobs, but at least I stayed a year. But you would always tell the person interviewing, well, if you look at my entire career, I love staying places for long periods of time, but when you hit the bad ones, you really need to make sure you can adjust and find a place that's a better fit. And I think staying in a place a year is a pretty good number, especially in IT, especially with the number of jobs available out there and how much people are willing to pay. It becomes very difficult to stay somewhere more than a year. You just have to figure out what makes sense in your area.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. I appreciate all the insight.
Best of luck. Appreciate the call. That's one where you kind of have to play it by ear, but you will be asked. If you leave a place quickly, they go, wow, I noticed here you only stayed there 3 months. What's up with that? Oh, was there a problem? Were police involved? What's going on? And they're going to want to know, which is a good question for them. Let's go to Nick on line 10. Hey, Nick, are you there?
Hi. Hello.
Thanks for calling again. What can we do for you?
So I was just wondering, I was always wondering about what would be a good foundation for OSINT.
This is a very popular set of topics lately, especially on the side of IT security. The open source intelligence, that is the one where, especially on the cybersecurity side, can be very, very interesting. You see a lot of it sort of spread everywhere. You see certainly the HR department is huge in OSINT. They're hiring people. They're going to be looking at everything they can about you as an individual. And they're going to check out what things do you post online? What information can we pull out here? I live in Florida where all of the legal records are public. So you always see the stories about the Florida man. Well, that's because in Florida, unlike a lot of other states, all of our records are public. So it's just easy picking for the people writing these stories. They can hunt and see, is there open source information about things that you maybe have involved in legally? They're going to pull up information about where you live. This is a very popular thing. And of course, if you're doing any type of cybersecurity where you're on the attack, you're that red team that's trying to break into those systems or find the vulnerabilities, OSINT becomes pretty important too. There's not a lot of places where OSINT is a job, where that's all you do. It's usually part of the things that you are doing. But there are a number of places where they are trying to use this OSINT data to be able to put into a much larger database and then do some data analysis across all of these. So in some places you can find jobs that are all about data. Data is the next big thing, or really the big thing. That's a current big thing. It's not really the next big thing. But being able to collect all that data and do something with it becomes pretty important to a lot of companies, and they want to take advantage of that.
I just find it a little bit more interesting than hacking. Is you're just focusing just on the electronic part of the argument. But I will say, well, what if we collect also OSINT? Like, what if we look holistic the whole thing? So that's why it always intrigues me, and also taps on like APIs or taps on different things. So I was just looking, okay, I needed Linux Essentials, but what next? Like, because the thing is, the Red Hat, okay, qualification for system administrators is £500, and if you have to refresh that every 5 years, well, that becomes a a substantial
Sure.
amount of money.
Yep.
Would that be a good option, a good idea?
Depending on what job you're going into, it certainly could be. When you get into those higher levels of IT security, where something like OSINT becomes an all-encompassing or extremely important aspect of what you are doing, then you're already making enough money that that's not really an issue. The keys at that level, you're already in the six-figure level. If you're up there where you're doing the red team, you're either on the attack or finding the vulnerabilities in these systems, either internally or to other companies. Those are jobs that require an extreme amount of knowledge above and beyond just OSINT. It's knowledge across the board. And you're also probably dealing with very sensitive data. You're at the peak of your career at that point. From a technical perspective, you're up there at the highest levels. So it's one of those things that becomes pretty important. I think when you start combining it with those other things, you take the OSINT and then combine it with your knowledge of operating systems, your knowledge of the network, and be able, because once you have the data, what do you do with it? How does that help you? Well, you have to combine it with other things. Well, if you find out that they are part of an organization or they have certain things that they do, well, now I can use that data against them to either monitor their traffic to one of those sites or identify files and information they may be keeping associated with the data that you've discovered on these OSINT discoveries. It just depends on what you're focusing on. I think that's just a portion of a larger picture, that if you're at the point where OSINT is interesting, then you're already on the red team. You're already doing those things. I will say, of course, and I've mentioned this before, in IT security, the number of jobs available on the blue side far outweigh the number of jobs available on the red side. We often think of IT security as the vulnerability guys. They're doing the red team. They're hacking into places. They're hackers with their hacking stuff. And it sounds very exciting, and it sounds very sexy. The reality is most of us are blue team, though. Most of us are configuring a firewall. We're setting up our IPsec tunnels. We're configuring authentication systems. We are collapsing all of our data into a SIEM and creating reports from that. We're monitoring authentication processes. That's usually what most people are doing in IT security. They're creating the policies. There are many, 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 many more blue team jobs than red. And that's probably why, because there's just a need for those skills in every organization. Not everybody needs a red team guy, at least not at that level. But it just depends on what interests you. There's certainly places you can go for both of those types of jobs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hopefully that gives you perspective. And as they say in the chat room, and somebody's got to fix what the red team breaks.
Absolutely. Basically, yeah, that was my question. Like, the thing is, always OSINT says, do not hack, do not hack, do not hack. Always use the intelligence around, like whatever is at the surface. Either you're going on the dark web, either you're going on the surface. But the thing is, then where is all the hacking skills fall at? That was basically my question for this jigsaw. Anyway, you said to me it depends on the job, depends what you're doing. I agree with you. Yeah.
That's pretty much the idea of it. And it's going to be different depending on what organization you go to. It's going to be different depending on if you are finding the vulnerabilities inside of a company versus to a third party. Perhaps you're a service. It'll be different whether you are government or non-government. So it really varies very, very widely once you get to that level. And at that point, you're very familiar with operating systems, networking, OSINT, and all of the other tools that you might need to be able to perform those jobs. So there's not one particular answer there. It really is quite varied depending on what you're doing and where it is, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Professor. That's why I just call you. I mean, the thing is, that was in my mind during those days. I was just looking like for Trace Labs or other like volunteering companies, so I can get some experience, get my my toes tipped within with Trello or Slack, or basically what they're doing?
I think that's a great place to start. There's tons of great videos out there made by red team experts that take you through the process of them exploiting a particular service or particular server or operating system. You can learn a lot by watching what they're doing. And it's also an opportunity to understand how much you don't know yet. I watch some of these videos, and these guys are intense with the knowledge they have of some of these tools. And it's exciting to see someone who really knows what they're doing get in there and really break it apart into its smallest pieces.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor.
Appreciate the call, Nick. Best of luck. That's exciting, though, isn't it? I mean, that's what you should be doing, is thinking that you want to do something along those lines. Where do you even start? Well, you just take a piece at a time. Take a tool at a time. Learn everything you can about InMap. Learn everything you can about some of these OSINT tools like the Harvester. Learn everything you can about step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Go through all of those. Do as much Metasploit as you can. Do as much online hacking type labs as you can. There's tons of them out there. It's a great place to go to learn more about it. Back to the calls. Thanks for holding for so long. 513 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing, sir? I'm David, calling from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
First off, I just want to say thank you for everything you do. You truly are motivation for me to continue into this IT world. I'm in a factory business right now. I had took a 1001 and passed it, all thanks to you.
Nice.
I'm calling because I took the 1002 and did not pass it. And I retooken it. And the funny thing is, both times I got a score of 660, but you need a 700 to pass it.
Right.
And I'm kind of having trouble with this ticketing thing, but I've watched all your videos and I don't really see anything as far as the ticketing systems and trying to, I guess better explain the ticketing. I wanted to know, do you know somewhere I can go or something I can watch to get a better idea of the ticketing systems?
Not offhand. I know that the reference there, we'll dance around the candidate agreement problem that we have here, but certainly some of the 221,002, the core 2 exam objectives, aren't necessarily expecting you to know how to be completely knowledgeable in ticketing systems, but more about how to prioritize and address problems that are being presented to you. And the way they do it's through the front end of a ticketing system. All ticketing systems are different. I've worked for companies that had their own ticketing system that we manufactured and implemented for customers. And I've worked for companies where we used a third-party ticketing system to be able to do that. They're basically all the same. They give you a ticket with information. It's a record-keeping system so that you know what problems need to be resolved, what information you can gather from it, and then what the resolution was. The key, I think, is not to worry so much about how to use the ticketing system, but understand what information is being presented to you and then know where to go from there. I don't want to give too much away because some of this is specific to the actual exam, but a good and perhaps one of the best things that I could recommend is what the chat room is saying as well, which is go to YouTube, have a look at what options are available for ticketing systems specific to A+, and I think you'll find a number of people trying to give their perspective of what they think could help with problems like that. That's probably the best advice I could give without giving too much away.
Okay. Yeah, because this is a specific question. The specific question is real vague. It's like the internet's not working. And I just don't, for some reason, I don't know. I just get lost when I'm trying to answer that question. And I feel like both times I got a 660, I feel like it's that particular question that stopped me from, passing this test. So
I have a suspicion, though, it's not that specific question that's causing it. In fact, a number of people have even said to me, I think I failed all of the performance-based questions and I still passed my exam because they were able to make it up on the multiple choice side. The thing I kind of tell anyone who's in this position of these tests is don't have too much tunnel vision down any particular set of topics. I see this a lot on Network Plus, where people spend weeks of their time trying to memorize and optimize an IP subnetting process, and they're just struggling with it. And they're saying, do I spend another week on this? And I tell them, why are you doing it at all? You might get one question on your exam that has anything to do with subnetting. Maybe you'll get 2. On an outside level, you get 3. But if you studied everything else for the past 2 weeks, you would have probably gotten other questions right that would have offset those. So I tell people that if you're wrapped around the axle with any particular topic, maybe a good strategy would be just to ignore that topic and spend all of your time on the 99% of the rest of the exam. Because if you get to that point and they ask you one subnetting question, but you're able to answer 2 other questions because you were able to study something else, you end up being ahead. So I think that's maybe one you could also think about. And don't forget about the list of options. You've now got 2 exams you can reference. This is actually good intel. Make sure you download the exam results from the Pearson VUE website and have a look at both of those. See if you're missing the same thing on both of them. See if the same topics keep coming up. And if they are, that might be a good place to start putting in additional studies on those particular topics.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good one. Thank you so much for that.
Well, hopefully that'll give you some ideas. You're so close to passing that exam that I think just a little bit of a tweak, a little bit of a change to your study process, maybe some extra practice exam questions before you go in, and I think you'll be able to clear that hurdle.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much again for everything, and continue doing what you're doing, and I will be to support you.
Appreciate the call. Best of luck. That's exciting, though. I think now you're right there. You're right on the edge. Time to go bring it home. I think that's what we do with it, is really focus on that effort. So in the chat room question, it is a mobile question. I see, by the way, there are a lot of bad questions on the internet. Just so I'll preface this particular one with that. I get multiple emails and multiple questions on my Discord every day of people posing bad questions to me and saying, I don't understand this. Why did they choose this answer? And my response to them is because it's a bad question. So you should not think that the CompTIA exam is a bad exam because some third party wrote some bad questions. The actual CompTIA exam is relatively straightforward. The questions you get, I think I tried to really emulate this in my practice exam book. I tried to write my questions with the same flair and the same style as CompTIA uses. All of my questions I wrote for my practice exams book are original questions. I wrote all of them from scratch, but I tried to put in the same method, the same voice that they use, the same style of questions that they use. But there's a lot of bad questions on the internet, and the one you posted was a good one. Because the question that was posted in the chat room, would mobile data and hotspot on your phone drain the battery faster than GPS, Bluetooth, and brightness? I don't know. How does anybody know the answer to that? Are you close to the hotspot or not? Are you close to an antenna, a cellular connection or not? Are you in the clear and available, have a clear sky available for GPS? What type of Bluetooth are you using? What chipset of Bluetooth is inside of it? What kind of brightness? There's no way to answer this question. It's such a bad question. So my answer when somebody's getting, and they're posing these to me and saying, here's something that makes no sense to me. And my response to them is, yeah, that makes no sense. Throw it out, ignore it, forget you ever saw it. It's a bad question. Keep it moving. In fact, your ability to understand that this is a bad question is actually more valuable than being able to answer the bad question. Because now you're looked at it and go, well, this is an awful question. And the only way you would know it was an awful question is if you knew all the things they were asking about in that question. So I usually tell people, you're already way ahead of the game. You've already been able to recognize in your mind something's not quite right about this question. Therefore, you're now in better shape. You don't have to worry so much about these questions because you're able to find the bad ones yourself. And I usually tell people, go find better questions. Find my practice exams, or there are a number of other practice exams you can get from third parties that are actually good. But most of what you find for free on the internet, unfortunately, is worth what you find for free on the internet. I try to change that model by providing the best quality content I can. And in most cases, a lot of this content is free. But at some point, you will find some of these third-party sites where the content is just not very good. And I think that's a really good example of a bad question. Would mobile data and hotspot drain the battery faster than one of these other things that may be turned on or turned off? I don't know. I have no idea. Every operating system is going to be different. Every subsystem is going to be different. Who knows? Who knows what the answer to that is? And what's really crazy is what happens is people will look at the answer and see the explanation for the answer and then try to rationalize the bad answer and the bad question and show how the other answers weren't the right answer. Except there is no right answer with that question. There's no wrong answer with that one. There's no way to know. You're not given enough information to really know what the right answer is there. So don't try to give these questions more credit than they're due. If it's a bad question and bad answers, just throw it out and keep it moving. There's plenty of good stuff out there that you could work through. And I think that's a good thing to work on yourself, is those questions. And worst case, get the practice exams book. That's my recommendation. That's a little self-serving. But even if you don't use mine, use someone else's that are a good set of questions. That's the important part. Find something that works for you. And if you're finding in your questions you're using, they're just really bad, throw them all out, go find something that's better. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour plus of our study group. We tend to do these and go through a lot of content in a very short period of time, and we would not be able to do it without your help. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being here in the first hour where I ask questions, and thank you for your questions here in the second hour. It's so much so interesting to hear the different things that are going on and the different things you're working on. But we've got more this week. Come back on Thursday. We've got another study group this week where we go through our Core 2. I've already written the questions. They're already ready to go. We could do them right now, but we're not. I'm going to make you wait till Thursday. Come on back. On Thursday, we'll do another set of these. We'll open up the phone lines again. We'd love to have you come back and see how well you do with your Core 2 exam objectives. Come back on Thursday. We'd at 12 noon Eastern, and we'll get started with those. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.